So many of the founders that we meet have this amazing idea, often world-changing idea, but they don't know how to necessarily incentivize people to want to be a part of that journey, to invest in that journey. I'm deliberating on whether to share a really personal story. And now I've said it, I'm going to say it. I have a big issue with the word because I've never told him this, so this is kind of why I should not really be sharing it on a podcast. But I've promoted vulnerability, so I'm gonna talk about it. The number one fear in the US being public speaking. Why is that more terrifying than death? And what does that fear mean to you?
We're interviewing Mike Lane Evans, founder of Forefront Coaching for businesses, startups, and individuals. Welcome, Mike. I'm excited to learn more about you and your business.
Thanks. Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Michael. We're nearly 2 years into the business at this stage, and it's been a journey, I guess. Like helping, like you say, a lot of people along the way.
First, let's get a snapshot of where you're at today, and then we'll talk about where you came from and what your goals are.
Yeah, so we're in London. We're in the UK. We work globally. So far we've worked on 6 continents. We're able to work with people virtually or kind of fly around and work with people. But largely what we do is provide communication coaching. So we help businesses of any size, and as you just said at the start, individuals as well, to be able to improve their level of communication. So for startups, that tends to be how to get investment or how to bring in more sales, more clients. And we're not a sales organization. It's not about pushing the numbers, but about connecting with other humans, about increasing that connection and being able to understand your audience. And so then we take that to larger enterprises too, who want to understand their audience either externally or internally within the workspace. How do they kind of motivate people more, get more cohesion, more inspiration for people to do stuff? And we never set out really to work with individuals along the way. We felt like we were very much here to support businesses. And the more that we're on social media platforms, the more we get a lot of individuals come to us and say, hey, look, I'm not a founder actually, but I really need support in my communication in this area or in this area, in public speaking or in networking. My company keeps sending me to events and I don't know what I'm doing. So that's why we kind of, from a marketing perspective, my marketing team hate that we just say businesses, startups, and individuals, because it's like, so that's everybody. But that really is because if anyone has a communication area they'd like to improve, like we want to just be able to support people.
So what are some of the common problems? So I'm your newest customer and I'm coming to you. And what are some of the common problems that I might have that I need your help with? And then how do you help me with those?
Yeah. Okay. So pitching, I'll start there just because I mentioned that already. So for startups, there's a huge need to pitch your company again and again and again. And so many of the founders that we meet have this amazing idea, often world-changing idea, but they don't know how to necessarily incentivize people to want to be a part of that journey, to invest in that journey, or to be the early stage customers in that beta phase. And so much of that is how to tell your story, how to be able to talk about what's needed and make your business, your brand, your product, your service seem like a needs to have and not a nice to have. And so storytelling and pitching are 2 areas that we work a lot with startups, with individual founders, with growing startups, with everything from kind of friends and family round all the way through sort of Series B, Series C. We get a lot of companies come to do that. So we have a whole area of our company which is solely dedicated to storytelling and pitching. Outside of that, then we have public speaking, which I'm addressing next because for some people it just seems like the same thing. But actually there are a lot of businesses that we meet, individuals who suddenly they're promoted to a role where they need to start presenting every Monday. They're presenting to their team. They're trying to inspire their team. Suddenly they've been invited to come and present to the board. They have never done that before. And then actually they overcome this huge problem as a company, and other companies are inspired by them. And so they're invited to this conference and this conference and to a dinner where they're asked to give a talk. And in the US, it's still the number one fear, right? Over death, public speaking is still the number one fear. And so we're able to do a lot with people in taking them from that place of just, I'm so scared, I don't even want to show up to these things. I just want to curl up and hide away, taking them from that place to a place where hopefully they actually enjoy it. So pitching, public speaking, similarly with networking, a lot of individuals, a lot of companies, startups, suddenly you have to go and talk about your business at these networking events, or talk about yourself, which for most people is even worse. And how do you create stories, openers, hooks? How do you end conversations too, politely and productively? So those three areas are areas that we spend a lot of time in. Presentations kind of usually comes in some area of that as well for some other types of companies. And then our final area is crucial conversations. So it's not a course that we started out with, and we built through a lot of experts a really competitive course in crucial conversations, because what we were finding was a lot of our clients were saying, hey, listen, you've massively helped me to communicate over here or out here to all these people, but actually I have to have this hugely difficult conversation coming up, or this crucial conversation that's really going to make or break what happens for the business at the next step. And so we come into companies of all sizes and not only teach them, give them tools and techniques, but then we give them the opportunity to role play it, to play it out. So all of the coaches, whilst qualified coaches at Forefront Coaching, happen to also be ex-actors. And so, or in one case, a still working actor on the side as well. So it means that there is the opportunity to role play and actually get into things in a realistic way and try stuff out and fail, like screw it up, so that when you get out there into the real situations, that then hopefully you've bolstered yourself so that you're not screwing up there.
I find that's fascinating. All the things that you mentioned, like, are they all stand out to me as super important and vital to business. Even a relationship, a personal relationship, can benefit from these things, like being able to tell your story, being able to have those crucial conversations.
Yeah.
So what's the biggest takeaway for most people in terms of crucial conversations, right? If people are role playing a situation that they're coming into it feeling and knowing inside them, like, this is going to be a huge challenge. As you said, I want to curl up into a ball and I don't want to do what I have to do. How do you see that transformation happening through the role play? And then what is their feedback that they tell you? Like, what do they get from that?
So I think when we look at this on YouTube, or kind of a basic sort of article that you can read online, we get some quite binary techniques, things like mirroring body language. And mirroring body, it can be a hugely useful thing. If you go and do any course in negotiation skills, that's going to come up at some point. So I'm not going to say it's a bad thing. But when we just get thrown it up without teaching it, without having an opportunity to practice it, see where it works and where it really doesn't work, it often is a hindrance. Actually, it's kind of a hurdle that you're putting in your own way. So one of the members of my team used to be a teacher. And when he was a teacher, he went through some training on body language. And they had this morning where they learned a lot about mirroring body language. And then in the afternoon, they did some role play. And they're one-on-one. And throughout the whole thing, the trainer has sort of got her hand on her knee, and she's sort of leaning. She's kind of leaning in a little bit more, and she's leaning in a little bit more. So Will, who's on our team, mirrored that body language. He leant and he leant and he leant. And at the end of the role play, she went, "Why were you so close to me?" And he was like, "What? I'm mirroring your body language. We spent 3 hours this morning talking about mirroring the body language." Well, the trainer in this case was 7 months pregnant. He knew this. They talked about this. and she's having some pain throughout the role play and she's pushing through professionally, but that's why she's leaning and that's why she's sort of also grimacing along with it. So the problem is he mirrored a simple kind of two-dimensional one-step part of her body language, but he didn't take in the whole thing. And so I think that's a problem that actually we see a lot of people coming to our sessions and they're like, I mean, that went really badly for me. So it's about giving you loads of options throughout the day to try out techniques in different ways. To actually, we encourage everybody to fail, to be vulnerable, to show up and screw up. And we do too throughout it. We show that vulnerability, and that's how we build trust with people in a short space of time at the beginning. And that safe space that we often, I'm not going to say 100% of the time, we aim to do it 100% of the time, but that safe space that we create that allows people to make more of these mistakes comfortably in front of strangers or colleagues and then build up from those. So in the case of mirroring body language, you can take a little bit more away rather than just try one technique, get told it didn't work, and that's the end of the day. And then equally, things like when it comes to feedback, we're going to teach you a really robust feedback technique. But if we just teach it to you and then send you on your way, it doesn't do a lot. So it's the opportunity to be vulnerable, to get up, to play, and to learn from those mistakes.
And so, as you mentioned, right, the value of showing that vulnerability is that that's creating a space to build trust. What's the value of failure and letting people fail inside the role play?
Oh my gosh, what that's a great question. Before, as well as watching some of your episodes, I watched the on YouTube. You have that clip of just everyone saying, "Great question, Michael. Great question," and I was like, "When's the first one coming for me?" Before I joined the call, and yeah, I mean, it is a great question, and I think what I can say is from lived experience. So I started acting when I was 8, right, and I stopped acting. We haven't talked about my background yet, but I'm not an actor anymore. And I stopped when I was in my early 30s. And when you're an actor, you get some form of rehearsal period, whether that's like a couple of minutes on a movie set, or if you're in the theatre, where I spent a lot of my career, you're getting 4, 6, sometimes 8 weeks to screw it up, to get it wrong, to try it out, to be in that space of play. And I think when we talk in the corporate world, that word play is often, it's cringeworthy. It's a lot of people in the corporate world say, what are you talking about? What does that actually mean? We've got real jobs. We need to get to it. And we absolutely do. And I think if we look at children, we know that with children, scientifically, we know that pre-5 or up to the age of 5 is the best time in life to learn as many things as possible. Our brains are like a neural sponge. But within that, depending on the culture you're in, but majoritively places, you're at some form of kindergarten, you're at some sort of play and improvise and socialize environment. And that we know, again, scientifically from lots of school boards around the world, really boosts our ability to learn. But as adults, we just don't really get that luxury very often. We get thrown into university or we're thrown into a new job or a new promotion, and the stakes are too high. And so that by coming to the sessions, whether it's a 2-hour session or a full day session, we're saying, hey, look, from the very beginning, as soon as you feel comfortable, just start failing, because we know scientifically it's going to help you. We know confidence-wise you're going to come out the other side. And in coaching, we talk about the wheels of success. And so beyond just our comfort zone, we've got to be stretched, we've got to be challenged. Beyond that one, though, before we get to success, there's a circle of fear. And so this stuff, it does feel like we just want to turn around and we want to go back and we want to curl up in that ball we spoke about before. There is better when we come out the other side. If that's about you learning a speech that you have to deliver, if it's delivering a crucial conversation, if it's just having to do a role play because you've never done a role play before because you're not an actor and now you're in front of your colleagues having to do it, there's value in role play. And so there's value in going through that fear and saying, hey, you know what? It wasn't so bad.
I love hearing this, Mike, because I feel like, as you said, the stakes become so high when you're in that role, right? And we take roles when we're in the corporate structure or in a startup or even when we're a solo entrepreneur, right? We're still taking a role as one would do as an actor, right? And okay, now my role is I'm the designer. Okay, I'm going to perform like a designer would perform. I'm going to build the website. I'm going to iterate on logos, whatever it is I'm doing as a designer. Now I'm in the role of marketer. So I'm going to spend time doing outreach. I'm going to find ways to get inbound and outbound conversations going. Okay, but now I'm the CEO. Okay, now I have to manage my managers, and so each of those different roles, right? We have to find our own way, right? And so what I'm hearing from you is, right, that we all have imposter syndrome, right? When we're and I think that's based on, as you said, the stakes are so high, and we must perform at a high level of execution right away. Once you get in that role, they're not. It's not usually the case in my experience, at least. Hey, you got the role. Now take your 8 weeks, to really take your time. No, they're like, you're in the role. Now you're performing that role. Like you're already performing that role. So the stakes are so high. So you're like, what I'm hearing from you is you're creating that space of transition, that people get, and maybe they didn't get it that they first when the time when they first needed it, and maybe they didn't even need it that moment. But when they find you is when they need that space, and you're
Yeah.
you're helping them to create that space so they can fill in the gaps as individual team members who are taking on a role in the company.
Yeah, and just to add to that, so one of the fastest growing HR AI companies in the world at the minute was a client of mine like 18 months ago when they were sort of at seed stage, and I learned a fact from them that when we look at training days, so traditional training, within 7 days after that training day, people will have forgotten 92% of what they learned. I love this stat. I love this fact. And yet I realize as I said it, most people will have forgotten this within 7 days from now, right? Because it's within that. But we're going to forget 92%. And why is that? Because there's a lot of reasons. One of the things I'm most passionate about is we're not having those interactive moments. We're not having that involvement. We're not making those mistakes. We're not having the opportunity to put on those different hats in those moments. We're just being fed information. And a lot of times it's in a boardroom and our desk is over there and we can see other people running around and we're thinking, what's happened? What do I need to do? Or we're picking up our phone and seeing all the emails we've not had time to answer today because we're on this training course. So our brain is just 30%, 40%, 50% out of the room. So of course we're not engaging with it. And so our packages all have, they're not mandatory for a company. They're very strongly recommended to come with if it's a training day, there's coaching sessions off the back of it with the individuals too, because it bolsters that learning and it gives them the opportunity to continue to practice, to learn in their different ways. So those who weren't that quite comfortable enough to really go that far in front of everybody, they can do it in that smaller safe space and continue to play and continue to make those mistakes.
I think this is super valuable, because anybody who is in these roles, right? They want to. No one wants to underperform. Everyone wants to perform as a high performer, and you're giving them that support that people need, to find that. So one of the things you mentioned was like about the four different areas that I heard were like storytelling, public speaking, networking, crucial conversations.
Yeah.
So for networking, right? You mentioned like you have to really, somebody who's in a startup, you're gonna have to know how to communicate, to reach out to others about your business, right? And they might be in a silo, right? They might have just been the builder of some new technology, like you said, some world-changing technology, and how do you help them break through, right? How do you help them find like this is a story that could resonate? Here's a hook that could help you start a conversation. How do you help them find that?
You know, I'm going to tell a story that we tell, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody. One of our team I've known for years, And I was at university with this team member, and one drunken night, people were talking about how good he was at selling, that I bet he could sell ice to an Eskimo. And he took the bet because he was drunk. And of course, he failed the bet, and he never sold ice to an Eskimo. He never tried to sell ice to an Eskimo. But the same guy on our team has really built this idea for startups, particularly, to say, stop thinking of yourself as a startup. Because so many people are thinking, hey, I'm just at the start. I'm trying to move up, and I need your help to go there, whether that's you as an investor or you as a client. If you're an individual, it's that same thing. It's like, hey, look, I like you said before, Michael, like, I've just gone into this new role. We've got that imposter syndrome, and I don't really know what I'm doing, but the culture invites me to just fake it till I make it. So I gotta go. And what this guy talks about all the time is stop seeing yourself as a startup, or stop seeing yourself as asking for help. Start seeing yourself as an opportunity. And I really think that like goes back to the story of him at like 19, 20 years old, drunkenly thinking, yeah, I could sell ice cream. Because his point was like, it's not about faking it. It's not about being disingenuous with your sale, but like, if I have something that people actually need, it's about the way that I connect with that need, rather than just saying, hey, listen, I know you have a load of ice already, but it's finding what is the pain point. And again, we are certainly not building our business on this story from a drunken night when he was at university, but that mindset is something that I have seen develop in him more and more and more over the years. And he brings that to our clients so much, in the sense of see yourself as an opportunity. And you can't necessarily be an opportunity for everybody. And that's okay. When we talk to younger businesses about figuring out their market opportunity, their market size, if we talk about what's the total addressable market numbers, you're never going to reach that. If I build a new laptop tomorrow, I'm not going to get rid of Google and Apple and Microsoft, but I can still have a really successful business in the laptop world. So even me as a coach, we do 20-minute discovery calls, free discovery calls with anybody that wants them, because we might not be the right fit. Both ways. We may not be able to support the things that you need, and you may just not like what we're about. If you don't feel comfortable, if you don't feel safe and secure, you're not going to get as much out of it, and it's a waste of your money. So I think it's finding, if we talk about networking again, finding the story that connects with your audience. And honestly, I have lost, I don't know the numbers of this at all. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that don't think about their audience when they're building a product, a service, a brand, when they're building their story, their pitch, their presentation, their TED talk, presentation on a Monday morning to their team or to the board. They're thinking, what do I need? What do I need to get across? What are my fears? I hate doing this. I don't feel very confident about this. All so relevant, not to be ignored, not to be shoved in Pandora's box, but you've got to think about your audience, because they are another human being that you're trying to connect with and motivate or inspire to take some sort of action off the back of what you've talked about. So if you're not considering them, the failure rate is really, really high. And so when it comes to networking, it's first of all considering, hey, it's not just the same story for every networking event. Like, who are these people? What are their pain points? What's the industry are they from? And understanding that stuff, which I know sounds obvious, do the research, but then crafting those stories. And so with our storytelling course, we give a lot of storytelling models and devices that they're almost like a plug and play model. So you can say, hey, look, we're going to spend a long time, weeks probably, crafting a story, but you're going to get so good at it, you can write another one of these in 2 weeks' time when you have that networking event and you need to shift it. I give you an example of one of my clients who did this just over a year ago. And 5 or 6 weeks after we'd finished working together, she went to a conference in San Francisco, and she knew this huge company that she wanted as a client was going to be there. And she wrote this story in one of the models that we'd given her. And we developed such a way to do it naturally. You're not going and delivering a story or just going, hey, you need to listen to my performance now, but just being able to be very natural, follow this structure, which we scientifically and artistically know really engages people. And it was an elevator pitch. She did it in like just over 60 seconds. And they said to her, this was in San Francisco, and they said, listen, you need to come out to Hong Kong and pitch to the board. Are you available? So this was like the second, third week of February, and they said, are you available in March? And that was because she had built that confidence, that skill, that ability to use that thing and adapt it for the individual situations. So when it comes to networking, we'll do lots of things based on maybe one event you've got coming up. But that's just an exercise. It's just learning to ride the bike the first time. You can then use that to ride the bike the next time and the next time for the different events.
Yeah. So you're giving your focus is on cultivating tools that people can take away. It's not just like this is a one-time thing that we can only do here in this setting, but you're helping them learn adaptability and resilience to new situations.
Yeah.
Which I love that, because then you're really meeting the person where they're at, right? If somebody doesn't have that skill and they come to you and they say, I need to develop this skill. Can you give me some models? Can you give me some devices that I can work with? And so, you said it takes weeks. What is the important thing that you're discovering over this time? Like what information, why does it take time? Because I've heard this before talking to others. Like, it's not just that you can come in and craft your whole brand identity and your whole personal brand and your whole, elevator story. Like, it's not just something that you can ask an AI, but it does take time. And so what is it about it that happens over time?
Okay, I just want to very quickly address the comment that you made about AI, because yes, you're right. It's not something you can craft over AI. And then I'll talk about the time. The AI tools that we have are just increasingly day by day incredible, right? They are so helpful sometimes and in some ways. And if you take to one of those AI tools and you ask it to write a script, what is it learning from? It's learning from ways that scripts have been written before. And so, yeah, there'll be some success in the ways that people have spoken, but also there's no individuality. You're using the exact phraseology, you're using the exact terms or grammar that those people or those multiple people have used. And so think about, let's say it's a pitch to an investor. How many times has an investor heard that phrase or that like lift, that tone, or that way of finishing a pitch? Or there has to be more individuality. We have to evolve. We have to grow. So it's a great starter. It can take a very daunting task of writing that first script and help you get started. It can also help you finish it and refine it when you need it to be 3 minutes and it's just, you can't get it below 4 and you've tried and tried and tried because you're too emotional, you're too connected to this baby that is your company or your presentation. So I think they're hugely valuable, but they don't know your voice. And even as you build one of these platforms to learn about you, I realized that ChatGPT recently has launched the voice element, and so it will start to understand our voice. But having used it right now, it's not picking up on like tone and intonation. It's not able to understand, hey, the way that I would deliver this sentence involves these words, whereas the way that you, Michael, would deliver it, we can still get to the same sentiment, but we're going to do it in different ways because we have different accents for starters. We have different culture. We have different upbringings and the ways that we like to put emphasis on certain things. And so for me, it's not about a gold standard at all. And I love that you said a few minutes ago, meeting them where they are, because that's something that's so important to us as coaches. We meet them where they are and then we help them grow from there. And so if we just say, hey, watch this video, watch this TED Talk, watch this previous founder, we can do that, but you don't need to go mimic them. We need you to be the best version of you, because people want to buy into you from your presentation. And so what you're learning to that question over time is a number of things. Trusting yourself. Trying, again, to go back to the role play, you're trying stuff out. You're seeing you're reading it aloud and going, that felt horrible. That did not. ChatGPT wrote that for me, and I realize now that I just don't speak that way. Or I've used Claude, and actually, like, it's helped me to form a story in a better way. But still, that's not for me, the storyteller. That's for somebody else. And so, trying that, finding out what your voice is, your voice as a, I don't know, program manager, your voice as a principal or as a CEO, different roles for different teams in different situations. What's your voice? How do you want to be received? And then linking that to your audience. What do you want to connect with from them? And so it does take time. And I often say that the biggest learnings that you get through one of our coaching programs is the gaps in between the coaching programs, the coaching sessions, because you need time to go away and just digest some of the information that we gave, some of the sort of mind-blowing moments that you've had. And I'm not even being arrogant to say I blew someone's mind, but you may just find something for yourself internally on your journey in this that you're like, oh, that's opened a whole box of stuff, and I don't necessarily have the answer in this session right now, but I come back to the next one. I have so much to tell you as a coach because I've been on this journey, and it's really, really common. We usually recommend like 2 to 3 weeks in between sessions. People can take longer if they like, but usually not less is what we recommend, unless you're on a real tight agenda for something that's coming up, because you want to go away and let it go, let it absorb it all, and then start playing and practicing with it and evolving to that next point. So that's why it takes weeks, because it's that time in between that's so important.
I hear you. Absolutely. I've really felt that in my own life. When a breakthrough happens, you need time. It's not just like this, the prefrontal cortex or whatever part is able to realize it in the moment, but it seems like there's more to digest in a way. As you said, let it absorb, right? It's through the osmosis system that we must have running internally, like there, like it goes from wherever you learned it into, what, now it's in my heart too. And now it's in my gut. And I really understand it in my gut, like, but, and I'm just saying that because I'm just exploring ideas. That's obviously not like the scientific way that someone might describe it. But what I mean is, when for example, if we have this amazing conversation today, Mike, I'm going to sleep and I'm going to think of like other aspects of this conversation. And then I'm going to come out of it like, especially as your client, right? I'm going to come out of it, as you said, like a week later, I'll still be thinking of things, like, oh, I remember when we talked about role play, how that would help. I remember how we talked about, what it's like to learn more about my own voice as opposed to, the value that I could get from software, which is, as you said, it could be tremendous maybe in the early stages or maybe in the polishing stage. But there's that quote messy middle, right, where we need to like let it out and like learn about ourselves, right? We are not software, you know. We actually have a lot of complexity, and there's always going to be things about us as humans that we'll never understand. And so, just filling in some of those gaps, taking the time to do it. I love this approach that you're doing. It just seems like it's going to lead to really tremendous outcomes. What have you seen? What have you felt like were some of the most amazing outcomes, like from where you took something from a very challenging place to overcoming that?
Oh, I think I mentioned before that we meet everybody where they are and then help them grow from that point. When I first started this a while back, because before I set up Forefront Coaching, I was doing this for another company. And you get those clients that come to you that are maybe abrasive or kind of, in the industry, we say not coachable and or hard to coach. And what we mean by that, I guess, if for anyone that's not involved in coaching at all, is is there that osmosis? Is there that porous nature? Like, are you showing up open to learn, to try things, to also take something on board and say, you know what, that's not for me. I appreciate those suggestions. I appreciate those ideas. I appreciate that we tried this, but that's not for me. And so you meet some people that seem that they are not coachable. They're not open to that stuff. They've come with kind of hard ideas of, well, I've pitched before, well, I've presented before, well, I've done plenty of networking events. And so I have a lot of stories about people that have come from a point of, oh, I really need your help. I've never done this before. And they go on this huge journey of development. The stories that often sit with me the most are the people who showed up and they were like, what do you got? And then they go on this huge journey. And like I still say to this day, and I'd love to coach this person again if I ever got the chance, but first 3-4 months of me coaching, so this is 6 years ago, I met somebody who was on the accelerator program. So they got kind of told, hey, we booked this session for you, come along. And this person is the only person to date that I felt like didn't get any value from any of the sessions. I've worked with thousands of people at this stage. And so I would love that opportunity to go back. But what I learned so much myself about that opportunity is that even when you get those people who feel like they're not going to get something out of it, they really are, because we just have the opportunity. Maybe that value didn't come from me. Maybe the value came from just having the space and time to practice. Often in coaching, and you've already demonstrated this yourself so much, is that it's those amazing questions that you would never ask yourself. The answers are there inside you. I'm not giving you the answers. You wouldn't necessarily get to those answers if you weren't asked those questions. And that's where really valuable coaches come into play. That's where a lot of the value of coaching, I believe, sits. And so as communication coaches, as X-actors, yes, sometimes we are going to give you some tools or some practices or some exercises to try out. Often with those people who are kind of like, yeah, I've tried that one, I've done that one. It's actually the opportunity to be in this trusting environment and just be asked those questions and self-reflect, that allows you to just grow that little bit more. That allows you to show up to the next session that little bit more open. And it's not about saying, hey, I'm an amazing coach, I got them to show up more open. But the ability to then grow as an individual or as a founder, to grow their business, is going to increase because you come with that open mindset to learn in many different walks of your life. And perhaps I didn't unlock that, but perhaps you were able to unlock that for yourself because of some of the questions that we posed to you. And so, yeah, that's the biggest kind of growth story, sort of development that I've seen in a lot of people now.
And what are those questions, Mike? What are the questions that help people grow the most?
If we just use the example of audience, sorry, a lot of times people want to come with the quick tip, the quick example that, okay, how do I start my pitch? What's the structure I need for this presentation? How do I make my CEO really listen up to what I have to do? How do I stop my legs from shaking? What do I do with my hands? There's all these kind of quick go-to questions. And yeah, we do have answers and tips for all of those. But in reality, it doesn't matter what answer or tip we give to you to those questions, because it may not be perfectly relevant for you. So I don't know what to do with my hands, what's happening for you when you're on stage, when you're presenting? What do you mean? How are you feeling while you're up there? Oh, scared, terrified. And so when you said you don't know what to do with your hands, like, what's the feeling in your hands at that point? What do you mean? Where is it that you feel your hands are? Well, you know what? I feel like I just want them to be down by my side, but everyone's told me I'm supposed to use them when I'm pitching. But then when I was at school, everyone told me I use my hands too much. So I don't know what I'm supposed to do. What do you feel like you want to do? And then there's maybe some silence. Because a lot of times we're watching podcasts like this. I mean, yours is amazing, but So often in a podcast, we're looking for quick tips and tricks. And of course we are, like we all are. We don't have loads of time to just keep practicing every facet of our lives. But those tips and tricks are not necessarily giving the answer that's correct for you. And so if you have that time to self-reflect, to understand, maybe, you know what, like, I don't want to use my hands all the time. But like, I realized when we just did that run through before of it, I realized, well, I have my hands in my pockets. Like, I don't know, like it just made me feel like a little kid. It was like here, just kind of like waiting to get off the stage. Did it? Yeah, you know what? Like, I don't know what it was. And like, I felt really quiet as well. Well, one of the things that I can share with you is that like, physically, when our body is open, when we kind of have that breath that can go through it, is then our voice will change, our tone will change with it. By opening up in the body in that way, then our throats will open, we are able to have more energy, we're able to kind of project more, whether that's our voice or in fact just our energy. Really. So you go on this exploration, and I'm giving, you know, the answers of the clients just as like one particular client that I can think of right now, because these questions are helping you to explore what's happening for you in those moments, rather than just, okay, this is what I would do with your hands, this is what I wouldn't do with your hands. And that's just hand gestures. Then we can explore those things for a lot of people. And I think when we look back at, like, I already mentioned it, the number one fear in the US being public speaking. Let's explore that one. Why is it a fear for you? Why is that more terrifying than death? And what does that fear mean to you? Where in your body do you feel that? That's a hard question for a lot of people to answer. Really hard question. I see it a lot. Where do you feel that? When we talk about different mental health issues, we talk about depression, we talk about anxiety. I'll just stop at those two. Sometimes we can identify where the depression is felt in the body and where that anxiety is felt in the body. I don't even want to name them because I don't want to kind of Google doctor people, but often anxiety is felt in one particular part of the body and depression is felt in another different part of the body, but for the majority of people. But that the same might be true of nerves for you, of imposter syndrome. And so starting to identify where that is, where that comes from, what would happen if you didn't succeed? What would happen if it did go terribly wrong? What would happen if you did just hold your hands up like this? And exploring those sorts of things, it allows you to catastrophize as well. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? It's going to be awful. It's going to be terrible. What's the worst that will happen with it? So yeah, I think that was another great question from you to start, like exploring those questions, because that's just, I guess, a drop in the ocean of some of the questions, because they're going to be very relevant. Just like you're doing with me, you're asking questions because you're listening really well, and that's what all coaches have to do, right? We have to listen and respond to what they put out in front of us. But exactly like we're encouraging people to do with their clients or their peers, we want you to connect with those humans. So we want you to respond to what's in front of you.
Yeah, I really love this framework that you presented, Mike, where you and it feels to me like a wonderful way of coaching, right? Where you're listening actively and intentionally to your client's problems, and you're working with them on the root cause and asking all those supportive questions and talking them through in a safe place, a non-judgmental way, you know, and helping them move from the place where they're experiencing some issues, some problems, which, you know, as you said, could be anxiety, could be depression, or whatever they're facing or they're feeling, and then moving them towards towards where they want to feel, right? It's more open-minded, as you said, like more energy or better projection. To me, this is like quintessentially like the 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 coach. This is what the coach must do in order, it feels like this is the kind of coach that I would want to have. You know, if I'm entering into a coaching scenario, like that sounds amazing to me. So who are the people that are drawn to you the most? Like So I'm sure you're finding different ways of reaching out, but also having people come to you. Like, how do you feel? Like, what's your best way of finding people to work with? And then, who are some of the ideal partners that you may have had, or who you'd love to work with?
Oh, I love that question. Okay, so the we've been very, very fortunate to mostly grow the business off recommendations. I would say, I'm guessing slightly, but it's kind of like 80-90% word of mouth at this stage. Or kind of, when it was just me, when I was terrible at social media. I'm a coach. I'm here to connect with people, and social media for me has this one-sided idea. It doesn't actually, but it felt like it does, and for a long time. And so, thankfully, I have an amazing marketing team that do that stuff now. But that's only been happening for a few months, and so we're able to kind of share our stories and connect with people. And I kind of give topics and stories that we want to talk about, and they do all the great work of it. But that then brings some kind of some clients that way as well. And both times we're building that space of trust. We are giving something without asking for it as well. We will often go, has been fed back to me quite a few times, so I feel like I can confidently say that we often go the extra mile. We let the session overrun a little bit if you need it to, if you're in that place where you're really close to something. There are lots of, I was going to start listing lots of things that we do, but I think there are lots that we can do for clients to allow them to get the most out of their situation. We're really not about, obviously we need to grow the business and we need revenue, but we're not about just milking people for the dollar, because that's not where the value sits. And so the value that allowing people to find that growth within themselves, whether that's in one session or 7 sessions, is what then has them go, hey, listen, friend, you need to go and see Forefront Coaching. And a lot of them come back too. A lot of our clients come back in some capacity for the next stage of growth for their business, or this huge, really important presentation that's coming up. So I think, to your question, we have worked with a few clients who are preparing for TED Talks. We've never worked with TED Direct, and it's something that I would love to do, because I've seen some incredible TED Talks, and I've seen some heartbreakingly disconnected TED Talks. And I watch and I think some of the content here it had such potential to really excite people and involve people. But TED, and this is not me to bad mouthing TED, because it depends on whether it's a TED or a TEDx, but there are sometimes some level of support. And yet I would love that opportunity to work with more of those people and create more of a level of consistent on the same page. Because if you go to an event like this, not just TED actually, if you go to any, you might see one of the best speakers you've ever seen in amongst 9 other, I'm slightly falling asleep. And actually, I genuinely believe that anyone can give a great pitch. Like, I really do believe that. A good pitch or a presentation, a keynote, like whatever that might be, it's the theory of 10,000 hours. You can become an expert if you do your 10,000 hours, which is why we need our weeks to practice. We need our time in between. You need to come to the sessions and practice here too. We do exercises to prepare you for something right now. It's also preparing you for the thing in a year's time, because you're putting that 10,000 hours in. And so it's not some magic secret that I have because I was born with it, or even necessarily because there is lots from my years at theatre school and in the acting industry that brings to it, but they're all practice. They're all opportunities to fail. And so TED, I think, is just a wonderful environment to provide that level of support. Beyond that, in the same space, podcasts, this is not me selling anything at all, but again, I see a lot of people that are just not connecting with their guests. They're just asking a ream of questions. And I think, again, a pitch can go from like okay to really great if you can connect with your guests better, because then you're also connecting with your audience better. And so that's an area. Do you know the podcast Diary of a CEO?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
So for the longest time, I wanted to work with Stephen Bartlett because I listened to him from the beginning, and I was like, there are so many things. There's so many. He's amazing. Everyone knows him, and he's got this incredible wealth of information. But he's interrupting people. He's occasionally mansplaining, and he's like he's got this list of questions because you could see or you could feel, in my case, the fear in some, or maybe it was imposter syndrome or just nerves or not quite sure, but my goodness, he's massively improved. I don't know who he's paid or if he's just done it himself. I would not say he necessarily needs that support now, but they're the things where you think, wow, that's a great podcast. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people listen to it. Could you actually connect with those guests even more? Because there are some of those podcasts that I listen to that really, you're like, I'm listening to every word, but maybe 9 out of 10 of your listeners had never even heard of those podcasts because they didn't have the platform or the money to keep them going, like Stephen Bartlett or I don't know, an ex-football player or something like that has already got an audience. So anybody that has an audience already or who doesn't have that audience that wants to improve that level of connection, it's something that I would just love to do more of.
And if I was Stephen Bartlett in the past, before he moved forward to the new Stephen Bartlett, new improved Stephen Bartlett, what do you think would have been what I would have needed to hear so that I could make those connections, the gaps that I was missing? What would you have said to Stephen Bartlett of the past?
So one of the things we know, and we've talked about this a little bit already, we know scientifically too, that in order to gain somebody's trust, one of the elements that we need is to be able to give or to show vulnerability, to have a level of intimacy. That's not hugging people, but giving a sense of ourselves, not just doing the professional version of ourselves. And now you really see that with Stephen Bartlett. You really see him being willing to share a story that connects something from his personal life that shows that level of intimacy. It didn't used to be there. There used to be this kind of professional version where he kind of asked those questions and wanted lots from the guest, but wasn't necessarily giving that much himself. And so that allowing vulnerability, allowing intimacy with your audience, with the guest, is something that will just know no bounds in terms of increased value. Equally, reacting. So what I mean by that, so as actors, we call it reacting. As coaches, we're there to respond rather than line up that question that we want to ask. And so I think if you're a podcast owner, if you are a director of a company who's interviewing, you're doing your appraisals with your staff, we've got this list of things that we need to get through, right? And so maybe you've set up some of those questions in advance, but it's okay if you didn't ask that exact question in that exact way. If somebody really opens up to you about like why they've actually had some lateness recently and tells you some really personal stuff, and then you just say, right, and what about your OKRs for next year? And I really have lost count again of how many people. Now, I realize that face, and I apologize actually, because that face, that expression looked quite judgmental. It wasn't judgmental. What was happening for me internally was it wasn't judgmental on the person that did it. It's my heart breaks a little bit for the impact that will have caused on the receiver of that they gave something, they really gave something to you. And not only did you not respond, you ignored and moved into your lane again. So if you're interviewing a new person, if you are actually, especially if you're interviewing a new person, I'm helping a really young grad at the moment to go through interviews in law. And so there are so many candidates for law jobs that the process to get one of those jobs is horribly impersonal, really like fast and efficient. But you still need those people to be passionate, to want to not just say they're passionate on a CV or show it, but actually to be really like enthusiastic about how you've made them feel throughout that interview journey, so that when they arrive on day one, they're already sort of a part of the company from that. And when they don't get the job, if they don't get the job, that's really like gutting for them, disappointing for them. But also, it makes them want to apply next time there's a job available because they saw something culturally, connectively. So whether it's interviews, whether it's appraisals, whether it's podcasts, whether it's taking those opportunities to react and respond, and it's okay if your initial thing doesn't get covered. So those two big things that I maybe would have said to Stephen Butler years ago, but not now.
And I feel like I see what you're addressing there, because I also, when I first watched Diary of a CEO, I was put off. I felt the same thing. This is so professional. This guy, the host, Stephen Bartlett, he's not responding. Like, he's just like asking questions. But then I took a break and I went back to it, and I also noticed the change. I initially was turned off by the old way. When I came back, I was like, hey, I'm hearing now about his experience growing up. I'm hearing about his experience in life with his partner. I'm hearing about his brother, his relationship with his mom. Like, he's sharing now in a way that is very different from what I got from those older episodes. And it's not just that he's talking about family members, but he's expressing emotions. As you said, he's vulnerable. And then I think the other thing that I got from what you said was that he's not just reading from a list, like he's in the moment with them, and they're sharing those moments together, and he's finding a way, as the host, to do what a host should do. Let's let the guest, let's help the guest be on a wonderful adventure that the audience can can connect with.
Yeah.
Let's find that story. Let's excavate and let's dig down, and let's get the good stuff out here,
Yeah.
that not everybody is capable of having those conversations, right? So the conversation that you and I can have now, if either of us is just on the street or out at a social event or something like that, chances are very low, in my experience, that we're going to be able to have, this the silence that would be needed,
Yeah.
outside of our voices. Not only the physical and the sensory ability to do it, but just the willingness, and then besides that, the ability to let yourself be vulnerable and articulate like what's really going on with you. And so with that, let's move on. So we always talk about the 4 F's in this podcast, right? So we talk about finance, fitness, family, and fun. So let's move on a little bit. So we talked about your business now, and also I also do want to hear a little bit about your past. So maybe if you can tell me about your fitness, like how do you stay energetic? How do you stay energized? Coming, bringing your best self. But then also, like, tell me a little bit about your backstory too, because we didn't quite get enough of that, I feel like.
Okay, cool. I actually I'll link the fitness into to that story because it's kind of there. So my backstory, first of all, is I started acting when I was 8 years old. And I did that, like I said before, into my early 30s. And where one of the big seismic shifts began for me was 2016 and 2017. It was about an 18-month period where things were going incredibly well for me. I was getting some really high-profile auditions, bigger than I had previously had. And there was a little bit of imposter syndrome that kicked in. And I thought at first that's all it was. And what would happen was very palpable. I would practice, I would be really prepared, and I would go into the room, and it felt like my energy, my personality, quite specifically as well, was sucked down. And so what it specifically felt like was I was only able to give 60% of myself. 60% of who I was, 60% of my performance, 60% of just connecting or engaging with the humans in the room. And most of the time, The moment I walked out of the front door, I could feel it coming back up again. And I worked on this in a couple of different ways, therapy being one of those ways. But at the time, I was working with the British military as a consultant, not serving, on communication and a number of different other training areas. And the way that I grew up in a military town, the way that I have always felt about military environments is they're a little bit like a parallel universe. They're not crazy different. There are just different ways that run in parallel to the way that we do in the world, different ways of communicating, different ways of cohesion within a group, different ways of motivating and inspiring. Not always, but often. And so in order to kind of continue to motivate and work with people, I found these different ways, these alterations of communication to consider my audience, to meet that world. And in doing so, it really helped me to consider more about what was happening for me and the ways I wanted to communicate. And I started to do some research, scientific research into this. And there was a study in the UK where they found 83% of people had felt in some point in their life what I was feeling, this disengagement between their intention and the actual engagement that they were having, sorry, the actual impact. So I'm intending to do this, but the impact, there's this disengagement, it's not aligning. And so I put a lot of work into that personally, and then I've been able to build a lot of those tools and techniques into the foundation of what we help other people to do. So the more time people spend with us in a communication coaching environment, the more we're helping them to align their wants with their actual needs. And so because that for me has seen so much growth for people, what happened quite fast was I was waking up in the mornings where I was going to acting jobs and not wanting to go anymore because I wanted it to be the next day or the next week when I was doing one of the coaching jobs. And the more that feeling kind of grew apart, the more I just realized, hey, what am I doing? I'm done here in acting. And I then began to work full time through 2020, 21, 22 for another company doing what I do now, and then set up Forefront Coaching. And in that interim period where I was like, before I even started the business, as I was trying to move from acting, the acting industry has given me a lot of fitness. I had done a lot of shows where it was like running a marathon. I'd done a show called the 39 Steps in the West End in London, where I forget, it was like 2 hours and 15 minutes. And genuinely, most of it I was running. Like it was so fast paced, this real farcical comedy. And I used to have to go and get massages on my lower back because the stage is only so big. You're kind of running up and down more than you are forward and around. And so there was a lot of fitness there. And I used to go and kind of lift weights as well as a part of it, because you want to strengthen the muscles around the joints when you're doing stuff like that. And when you're doing kind of pratfalls, and you want to make sure that, especially beyond the age of 30, that you're building those muscles. I didn't know that at the time about the 30 thing. And so when I stopped acting, having been interested in fitness, I actually did a course as a personal trainer, as a fitness personal trainer. And so for about 18 months, as I moved from acting into more full-time coaching, I would take on some personal training clients as well. And it's the fittest I've ever been, even from the running days. It's a level of fitness I'll never experience again. And then when I started Forefront Coaching as a solo founder on my own, I was working 15-hour days and I got married in that year. So for 10, 11 months, like genuinely, there wasn't really any time for fitness. And luckily, because of my training, I was able to kind of go and do stretches and throw a few weights around in the garage, and keep that fitness level going, but nowhere near what it used to be. And so now what I do is I go to a fitness class. Two personal trainers that I used to work with have set up this amazing place. It's a 10-minute cycle away, and it's my little oasis. I can put a podcast on, cycle there, and I can cycle back. So that's just fresh air in of itself. And then other people tell me what to do for 50 minutes. And I sweat, I get the endorphins, and I cycle back in fresh air again. And I probably sit at my desk for 10, 12 hours. So at the very least, that for me is just carving out that time. And it is in my calendar now. My team know that it's in the calendar. Like sometimes the timing will change, but it's is always booked into the calendar. And then we are about to get a dog. This Sunday, we pick up the puppy, because the one thing me and my wife have both felt is that we're not walking as much as we'd like to. Apart from that little cycle, 10 minutes back, I'm not getting the fresh air, and I'm noticing the impacts on my resilience, on my stamina to continue to work long hours. Because, like, I still love my job, but that fresh air, getting out in the elements, I know, again, scientifically, we know that that helps. Getting vitamin D on our skin at lunchtime, it really, really helps. And so the dog's going to make that happen.
So that to me is a very entrepreneurial solution to your to the issue of wanting to get more steps. Let me create a structure that now forces me to get those steps.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
structure is, you got a dog. You got to take care of that dog. Was I reading this somewhere? And they were like, people will take much better care of their pets or their children or their loved ones than even themselves.
Yeah.
But you found a great hack in that you could use your entrepreneurial mindset to not only have someone else to take care of besides your wife, which is your dog, and now it's going to help you take care of yourself too.
Yeah.
So that's a tremendous solution.
Yeah, and it's a real, like, me and my wife, like, we really have noticed that what you said about caring for each other and working together, and how much that's improved us as individuals. And I'm jumping to the family and the friends part of your questions, but just to say on we've been talking about the need to nurture something for a long time. So for all the dog lovers, I'm not just doing it because I'm entrepreneurial, which, Michael, you're right about, but also it's the need to nurture something actually is doing so much for us mentally and physically, that makes me a better coach. It makes me a better, well, I think so. We haven't got one yet, but the science and the articles that I've read definitely, point that way. So yeah, I'm excited for that.
I feel it, since for me, when I got married, I gained a dog as well because she already had the dog. So the time I spend, 15, half an hour a day cuddling the dog, like, this is not something that I had ever planned in my schedule, but now this is what happens. There's at least half an hour of cuddling with the dog every day. And I'm sure it makes me a better person, as you said, and it just feels good, like, here's the dog, like, what else am I going to do? I'm going to cuddle with this dog while we're sitting on the couch, like that. What else is the dog for? You're going to take him for a walk. You're going to play with them, like, you're going to feed them and pamper them. Like, now what we don't do, and tell me if you're planning on doing this, we don't, like, push the dog in a stroller, and we don't succumb to what I've seen other people do, is like their dog, like, mid walk, will give them some kind of signal, whether the dog just, like, stops and leans, or the dog just, like, sits down and whines. And then I'll see people pick up the dog and carry the dog. Is that a bridge too far for you, Mike? What's your plan with this dog?
So yeah, a very good friend of ours runs a puppy training school and a doggy daycare centre, and unfortunately, it's in the north of England, and I'm in London, so we can't take the dog there. But being a good friend, she's sent so much information about training and about the things that you do from minute one, day one. Not, oh yeah, we've had them for 2 weeks and now we need to start looking into it. So I personally have a real thirst to grow, develop, and evolve as a person, as a human. I really enjoy finding those different ways to kind of challenge myself and grow. I guess why I was drawn to coaching. And so, yes, have read quite a lot into training techniques and on different schools and thoughts of it as well, so that we're not just kind of blinkered, but trying different things out. And honestly, it doesn't feel like a job to me now. I'm just excited to be spending time with the dog, doing things that are preparing them for what I keep reading a lot is preparing them for the human world, right? A domesticated dog, they're living in a human world, but they're still a dog. They're not our child baby, and that's okay. We've got to consider those things and help them to survive and thrive within this world. And if we don't train them, and then they sit themselves down because they're just tired and they're trying to tell you they're tired, and you're thinking, well, I've got to be back on a call in 5 minutes. I'm just going to scoop them up. Now, I have no doubt I'm going to end up doing that one time. It's pouring down with rain and they won't move. But the aim is to try to, I mean, all of your dog owners are going to be going, he's so naive. We'll call us in 3 weeks. But we're just trying. We're going to try. We're going to try to do these things. On the stroller, we're not going to use the stroller, and I'm slightly embarrassed by this, but because for the first couple of weeks, you can't take them out so anyone who doesn't own a dog or doesn't know this, they have a vaccination, and then they have to have a second vaccination. And then ideally it's like 2 weeks after that second vaccination for it to fully settle into their body. And we live in London, which unfortunately you don't see them, but there are rats everywhere in London. They just exist here. And you really can't put that puppy down on the floor until they're fully inoculated. And so in this area particularly, which is a very dog area I live in kind of in Hackney, for anyone who knows London, which is kind of like the Brooklyn of London, for anyone who knows New York. And a lot of people have a sling. So not like a full baby carrier sling, but more like a cross the body one that's specifically for the puppy to socialize them and get them used to being around people and dogs before they're allowed on the ground. And I never thought I'd be that guy, but we'll be that couple walking around with our puppy in a sling for the first 2 or 3 weeks.
I'm glad that you provided this context for me because I never understood why. And I've seen the puppies in the slings here in Los Angeles. I always thought it was people just babying the dogs. But now that you mention it, right? And it's like, oh, maybe they're waiting for vaccines to kick in. There've got to be things that I'm not considering, right? Maybe they're scared that the dog's going to interact with another dog or with a child or like, and that's also something that I've noticed on walks. I've had people, because it's a Chihuahua, and so as they say, like, there are no bad breeds. They all have wonderful temperaments except Chihuahua. So Chihuahua has, as my wife has told me, she's like, don't let someone pet the dog. He'll bite. And so I've had to realize that even though that's never been my experience, I've never had a Chihuahua. So I have to defer to her. She knows this dog. So I tell people who he's a cute dog. They want to approach him. They want to pet him. And I have to say, like, no, he's mean. He'll bite. You can't pet him. Sorry.
So wait, do you push
do you have a breed in mind?
We've chosen the puppy. We pick him up on Sunday. It's
Oh, nice.
so it's a mini golden doodle. Have you ever come across those?
I think I've seen those. Yes. Yes.
So for listeners who don't know,
awesome.
it is a golden retriever and a miniature poodle crossed. And unlike my sister asked, it's not often, nature that has caused that. There's a artificial insemination. But the golden retriever, my grandparents had one when I was really small, and they are the most loyal and intelligent and amazing dogs. But our house is not the biggest, and they shared a lot of hair, and they're kind of on the bigger side. So you breed them with a mini poodle, you get no shedding, and they're smaller. And so we did. I did a lot of research, years actually worth of research into what breed that we wanted when we were ready. And so hopefully the research pays off. But we found a breeder, we found the exact one, and we pick them up on Sunday. So with yours, I'm so intrigued to know now, do you push the Chihuahua around in a stroller or pick them up and carry them? No. Okay.
No, he has many qualities that would be just, if you didn't know him and love him, you would think these were terrible qualities in a dog. But one of them is not laziness. He's not one of those dogs that wants to stop on the walk. And I walk him for miles and miles and miles. we'll commonly go on a 6 mile walk.
Wow.
Round trip, it's 6 miles, and he's not big. So to him, it's probably the equivalent of many more than 6 human miles. But he's up for it. As soon as he gets in the door, after that burst of energy wears off that he's been using to keep himself going this whole time, he's out like a light. He's asleep, and you can't wake him up. He's done for the day, which is, my wife loves that because he's very energetic, and he loves to run underfoot, and those are some of the negative qualities that sometimes appear. So it's nice to reduce the negative qualities by wearing him out. And then he's just this sweet sleeping angel.
Noted. We've been advised lots on that, and also on brain training games for very energetic dogs, and how that's just really good to take up not just their physical energy, but some of that mental energy that they need to use up. And I definitely feel that. If I have you ever read the book or heard of the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
So I'm not swearing for your podcast, but the book uses the full swear word. Basically, the theory is we have an amount of Fs to give every day, and if you've spent them, if you've used them, and the dog is sitting down on the ground, you're like, I can't. I have nothing left to train you right now. I just want to get home, finish this walk, and sit in front of the sofa. I sit on the sofa in front of the TV. And it's that kind of a feeling where most days I'm great, but this day I've got nothing left for you. But it's the flip of that as well, where when you've not used them all, they need to be spent in some way, and you become more nosy, or you become more like fussy about the tea bag left in the sink today by your partner, and all that sort of stuff. And such a basic explanation of a lot of different scientific ideas, but I love it. I absolutely love it because it plays out in so many relationships that I know, professional and personal. And so yeah, I think for a dog, I don't know if the same thing applies, but if they're not going on the walk for 6 miles and smelling loads of things and seeing loads of things and having loads of incredible experiences, then they're going to bother you a lot more at home because they need those experiences, I think.
That's really interesting. How does that work with people, right? How do we, how do we use this information to improve our closest relationships?
So there's I'm going to quote somebody else again now, but Brené Brown, who is one of my favorites. For anyone who doesn't know Brené Brown, she studies resilience and shame. She is traditionally a researcher and has become an incredible public speaker, amongst other things. Has a couple of podcasts and TED Talks, and she talks about this idea that she has with her husband, which is the percent rule. And we don't use it exactly in our relationship, but it's fed into some really helpful things. And so it's this idea of saying, like, oh, babe, we've got to talk about those things tonight. We've got to plan all of that stuff ready for Christmas. Listen, I've got to tell you, I'm on 20% right now. Oh, don't worry. I'm on 80. So I'll drive through most of the thing. I'll talk you through some stuff. If you can handle it, if you can't, just let me know. It might be more serious than that. It might be like the kids are screaming, babe, I've got 10%. Like, I've had the most awful day. My mom's in hospital again. Like, I've got 10% right now. And saying, hey, don't worry, I'll bring the 90. You don't necessarily have to have it, but you commit to bringing it. And then equally along the way, just it's okay to say, shit, I'm on 10% too. And it's not about saying, okay, well, we're going to fail then. But like, now we both know we're on 10%. Let's be kind to each other. Let's not get annoyed that the other one's not doing those things, because we've got to get through these things. We've got to step through these things. And so we don't use that exactly, but what we've developed in our relationship over the years is that ways to understand what the other person needs. So, like, for instance, I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, my wife discovered when she finishes work at 5-ish, she needs best part of an hour to herself. It doesn't mean I can't breathe or go through that room, but like it's not a time to start planning things or organizing things or just chatting about each other's day. Just it's that little bit of decompression time. Often for her, it's TV or a podcast or a walk. It will be a lot more of a walk going forward. And I know that and I respect that. And so if I haven't, it's okay for her to say, hey, can I just have that decompression time? So for us, it's not necessarily that percentages, but we've built up all of these other kind of ideas of things that we need. And I think so when it comes to the F's that you have to give, like her being able to, we do actually use that one as a reference quite a lot. And she will say, hey, listen, I've got no F's left. And I know what her day's been like anyway. I knew she had that huge interview coming up. So it's not a leap for me to get there. But it allows me to just be kinder and more understanding in the moment.
And so, how do you be kinder and more understanding?
Well, I don't always. I'm not saying that we are. My wife also is a trained coach, a qualified coach with the same bodies that I am. And so theoretically, we should both be great at communicating and always, on point and never arguing. And of course, that just isn't true. And it goes back to what I was saying about we can't just give the same tips to every person because it's about who you are, where you're at today. So the biggest thing that we do for success, and I'll take this as just a small step back. So in 2020, COVID years, lockdown in the UK, we found ourselves in a 2-bed apartment, beautiful apartment, lovely balcony. So we had some outdoor space, thankfully. Us two and another couple who we were already friends with, had been friends with for a long time. And it was only meant to be a short time. Then we were all locked in together for 18 months, really, sort of with the different lockdowns that happened here in the UK. And what we did was every Sunday, we would spend 30 minutes around the table and we had 4 questions. And so we would do question 1 around the table and then 2 and 3 and 4. And so one of those was what has worked really well this week. One was what would you like to request going forward for us all to try this week? Then because we were having less outward experiences, it was like something that you have learned this week, something that you want to share with us. And if I'm honest, in this moment, I can't remember the 4th one because we don't do this one anymore. But me and my wife didn't do this for probably 2 years after we moved in away from that couple and into this house. But in the meantime, we had inadvertently inspired quite a lot of our friends and family to take this idea up. And so we realized about a year ago that we needed to bring it back in. And so we don't necessarily do it every week. Maybe it's every 4 weeks, sometimes 3, sometimes 5. It's not strict. It doesn't matter. But we just mark these times in the diary to spend 30 minutes, 60 minutes sharing the things that have worked and the things that haven't. And so you build this idea of respectfully, when it's not in the middle of an argument, just saying, hey, listen, when you, and I'm going to use a deliberately like small example, when you leave the tea bags, it's a very English reference, isn't it? So maybe I should explain that one. When you finish with the tea bag, it could go in the bin or it could just go in the sink, which you're then going to move out of the sink to be able to put into the bin for those non-tea drinkers. And so it's, most people don't care. Some people really care. And this is genuinely true. I know a couple in their late 50s, early 60s, but second relationship, like post-divorce for both of them. And one of the factors of their eventual split up was the tea bags in the sink example. Because when they were going through some other stuff, they'd gone to therapy, they talked this through, the one person had explained why it was just not, like, it wasn't just, it's important, so do it. They explained why it was important to them and what it caused for them, the issue that it caused. And then the other person continued to do it. And it got brought up again and it continued to do it. And then what that meant was it was a sign of disrespect. It was a sign to not change habits, to work together as a team, but to stay as individuals. And that wasn't going to work as a relationship. And so in these Sundays, we had the opportunity to say, this bothers me because this is amazing for me when you, and so we build all these ideas and we just get to know each other so much better. And so then in those more pressurized situations, we can say, hey, can you do that thing that we talked about? And it's like the 80-20 thing. It's like we then have these quicker reference points to be able to kind of lean on.
Maybe that could be your fourth question. Like, what have you noticed I'm doing that's amazing for you?
Yeah. Well, that's what we mean by what's worked well for you. It's kind of, so in the house
Oh,
situation,
that's
yeah, in the house situation with the other couple, it was maybe more around the tea bags and the dishes and the bins and stuff. But now it's, sometimes it is that stuff for us, but other times it might be about like the time that my wife needs after work. Other times it might be about the way that we speak to each other in front of other people. That's something that has come up. So it doesn't necessarily have to be just the home stuff, but it's the, hey, like last time we spoke, like I had asked if you could change this, and you've really gone out of your way, it seems, to do that. And it's meant so much to me. It's really, really, I've actually felt more connected to you over the last 3 weeks. So that's what that first question is about. It's the celebration of those things. And when it was once a week, we used to do one thing for each question. Whereas now these chats can go on for 2, have known to be 3 hours, because maybe we're doing a list of stuff. And so, yeah, and I can relate this to work too, because the idea actually came from my wife's work. One of the practices they did. But so often, and this is particularly true in the UK, so often we don't celebrate the wins enough. Maybe we celebrate that huge merger and acquisition, or we celebrate the really, really big things, but actually it's been a really stressful couple of weeks just to get that one new piece of tech done for the website. And the moment we got it done, everyone's just given the list of the next stuff. And we don't have to all go out to the pub for drinks together to celebrate it. We don't need to throw a party, but acknowledge it. Celebrate the person or the people that achieved that thing. Psychologically, we need it. We really need it as humans. And often those who don't feel that they need it need some form of it, maybe in a different manifestation. And so, yeah, these Sundays allow us to celebrate each other as well as make requests for change.
So many of these things that I'm hearing from you like resonate, and then I feel like this one, like I have an immediate example from within the last 24 hours where I was having a similar conversation, and I didn't know how to ask for it. Like we were talking about a lot of things, and there was a lot of emotion. This is with my wife, so there's emotion involved, and so and it was complex. There was a lot of things, but I really wanted to, take a moment to just, hey, wait, we found a win in there. Can we stop? Can we pause for a minute? And that simple language shift from between saying, can we stop for a minute? Like she didn't want to hear that, but she loved it if I could say, can we pause for a second to celebrate that win? And then I still want to hear the next things that we have to say together, and we can move on. But it's sometimes figuring out the right words to say this thing that we want, like, is so critical. How do you help people find the right words in situations? Because sometimes it can be just the difference. With my wife, it was, if I were to say to her, hey, can we stop and celebrate for a second? She didn't love that. Can we pause and celebrate? That's great. Of course we can pause and celebrate. But stopping was out of the question. It was the same outcome, but not for her. The way she heard the word. How do people get over something? How do you help people learn how to do that better?
I think, gosh, do you know why I'm pausing here? Is because I'm deliberating on whether to share a really personal story. And now I've said it, I'm going to say it. I have a big issue with the word pride or proud, because I've never told him this. So this is kind of why I should not really be sharing it on a podcast. But I've promoted vulnerability, so I'm gonna talk about it. My dad uses the word a lot. He tells us that he's proud of us all the time. So you might be going, "Oh God, I thought it was going to be something awful. That sounds amazing." And it comes from a beautiful place, but it's used too much. It can then lose the meaning, the feeling behind it. Sometimes we'll get a birthday, actually nearly every birthday, we'll get a birthday card saying, I'm incredibly proud of you. But there's no context. I didn't do anything. I just woke up this morning. In fact, I'm really hungover because it's my birthday. What are you proud of? Like, so it's too big a word for me. It's too big a word to misuse, to overuse. So sorry, Dad. I should call him and tell him this before he sees the podcast. But it's, my wife knows this. And so an example I can give you is she just nailed it at a job interview recently. She went through this slightly stressful couple of weeks. She's gotten this new job. It was like an internal promotion, but it was certainly not a shoe-in. And she got it, and she's incredible, and it's something to celebrate. But I didn't tell her I was proud of her because she knows it's not my thing. And actually, the more we talked, the more I start to go, what's this? What is? There was something. There was a thought and a feeling kind of like growing. And I was like, what? I hadn't identified what it was, and I was like, oh damn! I really want to tell her how proud I am of her. And so when I did, that means more because it's not because there's a whole feeling, there's a whole not just language, but there's a whole rhetoric behind that for me, and for us. So the other thing to say, so with language, like it's like if you're like, if people like, I know people that just have this quite sort of deep rooted issue with being told what to do. And it can come from parents still telling you way into your adult years. It could come from never really getting to negotiate or work as an individual, as a child, and just always be told because I told you to. It could come from a lot of other places too. And it can really rear its head a lot. I see this in relationships. And the language of, can we just stop for a moment, is a little bit more like I'm telling you what to do. And I've never, just for the record, I've never met Michael's wife. I've never met Michael in person. And so I'm not suggesting that it was that at all, but it was the thing that I imagined, that the people that I know, that there's almost an instruction. Let's just stop for a moment. Whereas in, can we just pause? There's a request. Can we just pause to celebrate? Also, there's the positive on it for the celebration, but it's that request and pause rather than stop, just because of use in language is softer. So it's easier to receive, and it's meeting someone together rather than, hey, just stop for a moment. And it may not be the intention that was meant in that way, but often the language can have that reaction. But we do know scientifically that when it comes to overall impact, the words only really account for 7%. And where this gets really misused in this study from Albert Morabian, anyone who wants to look it up, is that the myth around this is that therefore words don't matter, which is BS. The words really, really matter, as we've just demonstrated with the story with your wife. But beyond those words, there's 93% of other stuff, which is 38% tone and 55% nonverbal communication. And so actually then also that's where we have to go back to what I was saying way back at the beginning, like, is that intention versus impact. If you try to disguise the fact that you said stop with, hey, listen, no, I was just asking if we could stop. Actually, the intention in the first second was, can we just stop? Because I just need a little breather here. Even if you try to change it, and I do this sometimes with my wife, like I've started something and I'm like, oh, that came from a bad place. I'm going to just smooth that over. Often she knows me well enough to be like, that's not what you meant. And so that's why, to go back to what you said, how do I ensure that, I make those mistakes all the time. I screw up because you're reacting in that moment. It's that very raw feeling. You're not taking that moment to pause before you say something. But then equally, I know very good friends who are a couple, and the guy in the relationship, he will pause a lot, and that can become quite frustrating because it has been known to feel like he's not engaged, he's not passionate, he's not caring in the moment. but he's actually taking that momentary pause to come back with the well-considered wording and tone and non-verbal communication. So this is turning into a really long monologue because it's such a complicated topic, and I think I can't say use these words and don't use these words, but understanding what do those words mean to your partner, what words, buzzwords do they have, and respecting them enough and loving them enough to change those habits. Even if you don't necessarily agree with them, you've got to change them around this person because it matters to them.
I think that's so powerful. And thank you for sharing your story. Right, it's as you said, when you didn't get that context from your dad, it didn't land the way that you felt the impact that there could have been. Wasn't allowing that to happen. You wanted a little more context. I'm proud of you, but what does it mean, Dad? So that I can feel what you're feeling proud of me for, you know. And then, like you said, you're going to talk to him. So I think this is cool that you're going to address that with him. And then also the fact that your wife, sorry, that you've talked to your wife and you've had this breakthrough with her, where you're like, hey, I see this work that you did, and I don't use the word proud because I have this connotation, I have this definition of it as not having enough context. But you know what? I'm going to break through this mold that I've created for who I can be, and I'm going to give myself more options right now. And I am proud of you. And then you told her that, and then how much it really meant to her, because she knows that is a new thing for you. This is tremendous, Mike. This is tremendous.
Yeah, yeah, and it's the biggest.
Let's talk about fun.
Yeah, hey.
No, go ahead and say what you're going to say, and then we'll talk about fun.
Okay, no, I was just going to say it's the biggest. I think it's just the biggest recommendation to anybody who is just carve out those periods of time where you can find out the likes and the dislikes and the wants and the don't wants when it's not in the moment contextual. It's just, and you've got to flag it before. You can't just ambush somebody with, hey, I think we should have a sit down, but more just saying, hey, I heard about this idea on a podcast. I'd really like to give it a try. I'm thinking maybe next Sunday or in 2 Sundays' time, just so we both got some time to think about these things. What do you think? Like, and getting that buy-in too is so important. Like, not just telling, but like I'd love to try this. What do you think? But then when you have those time periods, then let them speak, be quiet, pause, take it in. And take it in. We don't have music on even, like in the background, so that we're just focused. And I know it totally sounds really intense, but you're also doing all the nice stuff, right? So then there's a lot of laughter, there's a lot of affection. They tend to be 9 times out of 10 really great days, or periods within the day. So that's my biggest recommendation is just take that time when it's non-emotional in some way to have a conversation about what matters. Fun. Let's do fun.
Yeah, that's so that resonates for me so much. This non-emotional, like, because when the emotions are happening, it's like we can't even. It's really hard to communicate about anything. But you let that die out, like you said. It's like music in the background, stopping you from clearly communicating. You have to turn the music down. Got to turn the emotions down, so then we can clearly communicate. Yeah. Oh, I can hear you. You can hear me. We can actually hear our own thoughts too.
Yeah, yeah. You said it even better than I did. I agree.
We're working together here, Mike. We're working together. We're building on each other. What's your idea of fun? How do you have fun lately?
Dancing. Honestly, dancing. This is not me saying I'm some great dancer, by the way. But I sometimes in life go away from it because you're busy or whatever, but it brings me so much joy, and it brings me so much connection with Amy too, with my wife. Like it really dancing is that I'm not gonna say that this is how I feel, but that phrase of dance like no one's watching, that it's become incredibly cheesy or corny, that phrase. It's on a lot of like canvases that you can buy and put on the wall and whatever, but it just comes from a place of like we as adults not only get judged a lot, but we become aware of that judgment, right? You see it the first time, a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old starts to become aware of how other people are seeing them when that sense wasn't there in the first place. So I'm not always successful in dancing. Like I don't care who's watching, but I more frequently than I realized will dance around the house. I will like we go out dancing. And there is a program here called Strictly Come Dancing, which is the British version of I can't remember it's a dancing program. It's like Latin and ballroom dancing, and there's an American version I've just forgotten the name of. Dancing with the Stars. That's what it's called. And
Oh, that's it. Yeah, yeah.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And so many of my friends, male, female, like trans, so many of my friends who know me are going, "What? How is that your favorite program that's on TV right now?" And I can tell you because A, it's dancing, B, it's growth, it's development, people who couldn't do a lot who are growing, people who could do quite a lot who are growing, but there's so much joy. There's so much heart and sharing and camaraderie with the other contestants that are on the show. Oh my gosh. Like, what's not to like? Being free and open and dancing and spreading joy with other people. So yes, that and rugby, which again won't necessarily translate, but rugby is my sport. I grew up with that sport. I love watching that sport, and I love being in a pub environment again with all the joy and the other people and the community and the feeling. I'm a very sensitive person. Like pick up on. It's like the definition of an extrovert is someone that gets energy from other people. That's me. I definitely need introverted periods. But yeah, being in those environments and seeing that love and that joy from other people, that's what I do for fun.
And so when you're going dancing, this is partner dancing?
Great question. So sometimes, yes, we've done that. Sometimes it's just going out to see a DJ or a band that we love that's got like up-tempo music and dance. Yeah. So a lot of times it's DJs, and it doesn't need to be great dancing. It's not a dance routine. It's just feeling music and dancing to it.
And how did you get? So there was a time for me when I saw people like there'd be a live band, or like you said, there's a DJ or some sort of concert where I saw them get lost in the music. Like I could see that there was some sort of connection that they were having with music that allowed them to move their bodies in a way. And I knew I didn't have that. And I was so challenged in that time because I wanted that so badly.
Yeah.
And I would try, and I realized like I don't have that. Was that something that you always had? Or how did you get that? How did you develop that in yourself?
Yeah, I think it is something that I always had, and it's something that I didn't allow to come out. So I started, because I grew up, I was acting since I was 8, but I didn't dance through any of that time. And I did a show when I was 17 where we had to dance, and I loved it so much that I continued dance lessons from that point. It's also when I stopped playing rugby. I basically swapped out rugby for dance, and started doing a lot of dance at the same time. And for me, and for me, like 90% of that was because I was a boy and boys aren't supposed to dance. That was what it was for me as a child. That was the environment that I grew up in, the kind of the culture that I grew up in. It wasn't particularly like aggressive or negative, but like, I got bullied a little bit at school for the acting work that I did. Like people would make assuasions on like what I was like, physically, or my sexual preferences, or those, like a number of different things over the years based on just the fact that I was an actor. And so, that more of that's coming when you start dancing, and you're in like the clothes that come with doing modern or ballet, or I never did do ballet, but not because I wouldn't, because I was 17 and my muscles were rugby muscles and not then able to go into ballet at that age. It was too far gone. But yeah, it was a lot about pressures around me, but I do think that it was always there and that I ignored it for a long time. That's really how I felt when I started doing it. Was I felt like I was letting something out that I wanted to do for a while.
How did you where did that reside in you? How did you know it was there? Because for me, it was I I I remember very similar situation that you described,
Okay.
right? It wasn't like when I was a kid, it was the same for me in my environment. Like this is not a cool thing for guys to do, but I still knew that that was something cool to me. Like, and I did have a buddy who was into dance, and he was really cool, and he had, you know, he didn't seem to have problems with people picking on him, and I was like, that's a mystery. How did you do that? How'd you pull that one off, buddy? You know, like how did you get to be a dancer and nobody's picking on you and everybody thinks you're cool? But also, like I remember like people would talk about, do you want to take dance class? And I wanted to, but I didn't know how to say yes and then make that actually happen. So so what was it in you? Like how did you get yourself to do that from a surrounding environment where it was, there was going to be some negative consequences? How did you get yourself over that?
I think there has to be this level of both self awareness and self assurance. So there has to be a level of confidence that, just to be clear, I didn't have before I started doing this. So I grew up in a small country town. There was a population of like 60,000 when I was growing up. So it's not tiny, but it was, we didn't have any kind of theatre activities that I could go and do. And so even though I started at the age 8 with stuff on camera, when I was at home in hometown, there was no theatre I could go and do. And so I didn't have the community that I then birthed. And so when I was 12, the theatre opened for the first time. We had a load of money pumped into the town and we got a theatre built. And about a year before, they announced that they were opening it and there would be a youth theatre, this kind of this program for young people. And my mum signed me up like at the moment that she read the article, and knowing that I already wanted to do it, but it gave me a community, it gave me a place. And then when I got to 14 or 15, the opportunities rose a lot more. And so rather than just being with that one place, I was then with like 4 or 5 different theatre groups. I was doing it at school too. I was getting the leading roles at school. That it wasn't so much about saying, hey, I'm amazing. Of course, that does feel good though, to get that accolade and that recognition. But it was more about just saying, I'm good at this, clearly. Like that the self-awareness can now align. It's the same thing, the intention, the impact is aligning. It's the idea of kind of like, I think this is true about me, but I don't have enough to corroborate it. And the more it corroborates it, the more you go, okay, I don't think I'm crazy. I'm actually good at this. And so it's less about going an arrogance of floating through the world for me, and more about when people slate that, I'm less hurt by it because I know I'm good at this. And then then I went from being a big fish in a small pond to being a small fish in a big pond when I then went to theatre school, and the whole process started again. And then the same thing, I guess, happened in some respect in 2016, 2017 when I started to fail again. And so, yes, there's a lot of imposter syndrome there, but it's about comfort. It's about that self-corroboration, that self-awareness within those environments. And so when I first used to be bullied at school, at high school, it did bother me at first. But the more shows I was in, the more kind of people enjoyed those shows, and the other ways I found other groups of people, like groups of people when I went off to college. You meet in groups of people, because here in the UK we have high school finishes at 16, then you have 2 years of college before you go to university. For anybody who didn't know that. And so it was in those 2 years of college, I'm meeting people from all these other schools now, and these other different groups and these other backgrounds and these other walks of life and interests. And so suddenly it's like, oh, I don't need to worry so much about what they think anymore. And then that was a journey. And I remember very pinpoint specifically at the age 28, this alleviation of just what people cared about me. It's never going to go completely, but just so much of it dropped away at the age 28. And I've read a bunch of articles that say it's a really common age, that happens a lot for people around that age. And so I think for anybody younger listening to it who doesn't want to wait till they're 28, it's just like finding that self-awareness, that corroboration within what you're doing and what you love, so that you can ignore the I was going to say the haters, but that sounded too kind of childish. But ignore the bad side of things that you're getting, or take what you want from that. Like as an actor, you get written reviews, and sometimes it's worth taking that on board because actually they were right. I was overacting that night because I knew the reviewer was in, so I was trying to give my all, but actually I wasn't being natural and genuine in that character. And the same goes for all interactions with other humans, right? Just being yourself more and being genuine to who you are is what others will respond much better to, always.
That's, I think, amazing advice for anyone who's, like you said, younger, but really any age. You're finding that thing that you have to find the amount of that part of your self-awareness to know what it is you love, and then do it. And then that connection is what brought you that quiet confidence, so that you could then not feel intimidated by the world at large. And then also, I think, like bullies, if that's, because that can still happen at any age,
Right.
they sense that as well. And they stay away from the people. I feel like there's going to be a lot of bullies that would stay away from people who have that quiet sense of confidence, who can just they don't seem like they're going to be easy to intimidate.
Yeah, and there has to be a reward for bullying, right? Like what they get something out of it, and if you are just like, oh yeah, I guess, I don't know, like say the comment is me dancing around, and there's a comment about me being particularly camp, and I'm not bothered by that because I don't think camp is a negative quality, and I'm saying, yeah, I guess in that dance I kind of do. I'm not saying that just to fight them off. I'm just saying it because that's genuinely how I feel, and that level of confidence. Then what do they do with that? Like they might come back with something else. I keep going, but that thing has been deleted. And so yeah, I think rather than fighting bullying, is just being genuine to who you are, and being confident in who you are, which is I stumbled there because that's not, I don't claim that's an easy thing to just be confident, but having that self-assurance and that confidence allows that kind of negativity around you to diminish a little bit, because you're not just pandering to it all the time. You're not trying to meet other people's needs. You've got yours sorted.
And I think what I'm hearing from you is it's not about skill level. It's the fact that you've identified this is what you resonate with. This is part of my path. This is part of my adventure, and now I'm doing it. And because of that, skill level doesn't matter as much, because you're connected to the thing that you're doing. And in fact, if you're at the beginner level of your skill, intermediate or higher levels of skill, there's always somewhere to move towards. So
Yeah.
in that sense, because I think some people could listen to this and go like, well, it's all well and good if you're so great at something,
Yeah.
And you feel that self-confidence, but the self-confidence isn't about being so great at something. It's about feeling like, oh no, I found a thing that I like.
It does.
That's
Yeah.
where the confidence is.
Yes. It might be that I spoke before about it being corroborated by other people saying that it's good, but also it might just be corroborated by the joy around you. I am dancing in this environment, and other people are dancing in this environment, and we are sharing this joy. There's corroboration in that. It's not, you might not be the best dancer in the world. I'm certainly not, and never have been. I get so much joy from letting it go, that the joy is so important to me that I don't want other things to squash that joy and to stop it from happening. What I have to ask, like, what do you do for fun that gives you that same level of that freedom?
Social dancing.
Oh, you do? Okay, great.
Yeah, I do swing dancing. So it's a lot of uh, you know being a part of a community, either that you already exist in or moving to a new community, because these are because it's a partner dance. They're communities that happen in every city, right? And so then you find the community, or you're a member of a community, and then so there's there's a lot of skills that you get a lot of reps in, such as asking someone to dance, right? Or being able to respond to someone asking you to dance, and then doing the dance itself, and then knowing how to disengage from the dance, which is a lot about reminds me a lot of what you were talking about networking. Like, how do you also say goodbye in a way, and end the conversation in a way? And because you could have an amazing approach to someone in a dance, like, would you like to dance? Absolutely. And you could have an amazing dance. You could really mess up in the disengagement and the leaving of the dance, like, and you might not know what the thing is that you're doing, but you could gauge it by your partner. Like, if they seem happy and stuff, and then at the end, you could tell, like, oh, something turned a corner there. What happened? You know, did I hug them at the end? And did that seem not right? Did I not, just completely let go of them? Did I say goodbye? Or did I not say goodbye? Or were they wanting something more? Were they hoping I would ask for their number? No, I've got a ring on. Hopefully they know that I'm married and this isn't a dating. This is not the beginning of a dating situation. Like, this, it's so interesting that all those parts really matter. Um, and now I'm curious. Now that I've just brought it up, I do want to hear, like, what you might help somebody through if they've met somebody at a convention or somewhere, and they started in a wonderful way. Hey, what brings you here to the convention, or whatever they started with, and then they have a little chat about, oh, I'm doing this business, oh, I'm doing this business, and let's say a couple different outcomes could happen,
Yeah.
and at the end, and then how would they proceed in a successful way to wrap it up, rather than, like, it not wrapping up right? How would you help somebody through that?
So one of the examples that we like to give, if you're there to, if you've shared things honestly with that person. So let's say we're at the conference and you and me are talking, and we've even met now. And so we're having this kind of like, oh, it's great to actually meet you in person. And I'm saying, how come you're here? Oh, I'm here. I'm going to be talking later. Oh, wow, I didn't know you were talking. And you gracefully asked me what I'm there for. And I'm saying, well, actually, we're here because there's a couple of businesses that we're working with that are going to be up there presenting. And it's a really good opportunity for us to kind of be here to show that level of support to other businesses. If I've been honest in that way, right, then I can finish it very simply by saying, it's been so nice talking to you, and I can't wait to see you talk on stage later on. I've just seen a guy who's the CEO of one of the businesses that we're really keen to work with. I'm going to go chat to him if I can. And if I get a chance, I'll come and circle before your presentation. If not, I hope it goes so well, and I'll see you afterwards. Positive, positive, positive. Now, maybe you don't have all those circumstances in there, right? So let's say you're not talking on stage. Let's just take that out so it's harder. Still do the whole thing. I've told you that I'm here to do these things. I'm going to chat to the CEO. I'm really keen to work with them. Hopefully I'll see you again before the event finishes. It can be as simple as that. Maybe I haven't told you what I'm here for. Maybe you haven't been graceful to ask me what I'm doing here. Same thing, just saying, it's been so nice catching up with you. I have to be really honest with you. We're here because we're trying to gain a few more clients. There's a couple of businesses here that we are so keen to work with. And I've just seen the CEO of one of those businesses. I'm just going to go and talk to him while he's not talking to anybody else, or she's available. And then I'll come grab you afterwards if you're busy. No worries. Equally, if you do not want to go back to that person and it isn't that level of, don't false promise. Just saying, I've just seen the CEO that I really want to talk to. It's been so lovely getting to know you. I hope that you get what you came here for. I'm just going to go and see if we can land their business. Positive, vulnerable, realistic, honest. It doesn't need to be, I'm finding you really boring. I'm going to talk to that guy. It's one of the strongest ways to move on is to let that person know why you're moving on. And yes, the honest answer might be, I'm so bored to tears and there isn't anybody, but I'm just making that up. So you could argue, well, that's not honest, Mike. So then saying, hey, it's been really nice talking to you. I'm really keen to get to know as many people here as I can and network in the kind of the full sense of it. And I'm aware we've both only got about half an hour left. So nice to chat to you. And I really hope that the X project goes really well. I'll see you later. A little bit awkward, a little bit less trajectory in terms of the positivity, but you've got to work with what you've got. Just being honest about going out to something else. And you know what? I teach this, but I didn't do this at an event 10 days ago because I actually was really enjoying talking to the company I was talking to. And I'm going to continue to work with them. But I missed the opportunity. There were two people at that event that I really wanted to talk to and I didn't get the opportunity to. Thankfully, they're both coming off the back of it. I was able to kind of make sure that I still get to talk to those people in follow-ups. But I guess what I wanted to share is whilst they teach it, whilst they offer it as advice, you're still going to fail. And that's okay. That's part of it. Try it and fail it.
That's tremendous. Okay, let's move to the lightning round.
Okay.
And that's where I ask, instead of the blue sky questions, it's just some targeted questions. Are you ready for this,
yes,
Michael?
Let's do it.
Or Mike?
Yeah.
All right. In your life, what has been your best investment for your financial health? This could be a book you've read, an idea. This could be an actual investment with your money or your time, but best outcome from an investment for your financial health.
I'll tell you what I'm thinking. I know it's meant to be lightning, and I was doing the thing where I thought of loads of things and kept trying to think of something more significant, but it really is in my team. It's in my team. Being able to delegate, being able to share ideas, being able to learn from other people, grow together as a team, that is an investment that in some cases, let's talk about my EA, maybe sometimes 10% of the work she does, I could be doing myself. The alleviation of my shoulders to actually just give me the headspace and increase my sort of mental strength with the clients that I have because of the stuff that she's able to do for me. And actually she's more than an EA now, so she's very much a part of the business and she helps workshopping and creating stuff as well because she's become such a valuable asset. And so, yeah, all of the team members is the biggest investment I've ever made financially.
Your best investment for fitness.
I'll give a shout out actually, and there's not a lot of them in the US, so sorry, but there is a company called BFT, and when it does start to spread more, it's from Australia. We've only got 3 of them in the UK right now. It's the best investment I've ever made. It's so scientific, so well tailored and exciting. Yeah, it's handing over my fitness responsibility to not just somebody else, but to a room full of experts who are backed by even more experts at a higher level. It just makes me feel so much trust and safety. That's what I would say.
And so for those who are new to BFT, what do they provide?
Great question. I was trying to keep my answers as short as I could. So it's a 50-minute class, and there are sort of cardio days, but there are also a lot of class situations focus on work really hard and fast. And then they also have days which are very slow with loads of rest that are about building muscle. Now, that doesn't mean you're there to be a bodybuilder. It's just that beyond the age of 30, our bone density starts to sort of head into a worse situation. And so actually we need to strengthen all the muscles around even more beyond the age of 30 than pre that. And so actually just taking those classes, then there are also classes in balance, improving your stretch and your overall balance. So it's built around heart rate zones so that you work hard or not so hard, depending on what's curated for that specific day in that specific week of an 8-week cycle. and then you're into a different 8-week cycle. So they're really looking after you, not just in terms of getting you beach ready, but actually in longevity, which is something that I will sing about if we do another 2 hours of talking to each other.
Best investment for family.
I think the puppy. Um, I. This is going to maybe sound a bit crude. My wife is the best emotional investment I've ever made for my family because, for a number of reasons, but actually, when we first met she's so loyal and passionate and with her family. It reminded, like, I've always been really close with my family, but when you're living away, which we do on the other side of the country, it's easier to kind of just talk a little bit less and text a little bit less, and then it's just that encouragement or that sort of awakening to these people are really important, and nurturing those relationships is really important.
And your best investment for fun.
I kind of don't want to just go back to dancing again, but we I'm going to make it for some of your listeners who have this this particular idea, but I'll go there. There is an island in Spain or just off Spain called Ibiza. For those who are not aware of it, it has this rep of just being all about drugs, basically. But Ibiza was known as the Magic Isle way before dancing. Like big clubs were there. There's something very magical about just the place and about the people, and so many people leave there feeling just very, very different. And the second holiday I ever went on with my wife when we first met was just the two of us to go dancing in Ibiza, and that level of fun and laughing and just forgetting about the serious things, just sort of, I was going to say unplugging, but almost like plugging in to the fun, is something that we established quite early in our relationship, and we were able to kind of find those moments when we really need them. And when work gets really stressful for each of us, I think that's another reason why dancing has become such a important thing to me.
Love it. If you were my business coach, what would you tell me to grow this podcast?
I would have a lot of questions before I answer that question. My biggest question about your podcast is, it's longer than nearly every podcast that we've been talking for, and I'm so interested to know more about your data, your understanding of your audience and what they want and what they need. And so I would explore a lot of questions around your connection to your audience in relation to the length of the time, the particular questions that you're asking, but making it very much about your audience.
And who do you recommend me to interview next?
I knew this question was coming and I still wasn't prepared for it. I haven't listened to all your episodes, so it's hard for me to say, oh, you need to talk to somebody like this. However, I think that I want to say a psychologist, right? And that's why it sounds just really like vague and not going anywhere. I tell you what, I really want to say, if it's anybody that's allowed, I want to say Brené Brown. Like, interview Brené Brown. That's what I want to go to. But if we link that back to somebody that's less famous, perhaps, it's about somebody that is knowledgeable and really connected into, let's call it the human condition, to understanding just some of those things that like you said way further ago in this podcast, but you said about how humans are really complex, and we were comparing to AI. We're never going to know everything that there is to know. These experts that about a particular area, in her case, it's about shame, that really know so much, delving into the nuts and bolts, if you will, the mechanics of the human mind, the human condition, the human body. That is just to bring out more of that kind of that science and that evolution. And that's why I kind of say, in a more general sense, a psychologist that can come bring some of the meat that we can really learn lots from, and how that connects to just the more general things that motivate us on a daily basis.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll reach out to you for that connection to Brené Brown.
Yeah.
Mike, where can people find you? So people want to work with you. They've heard all these awesome things about your work, and they know a lot more about you now. Where can they find you?
So our website is forefront-coaching.com, and you can look me up on LinkedIn, Mike Lane Evans. When my wife and I got married, we double-barreled our surname, and so far, I haven't met or come across another Mike Lane Evans. So you just should be able to put that into LinkedIn, and you'll get me. But the main reason I would suggest LinkedIn is, or to be honest, the same. You can find Forefront Coaching on Instagram and Facebook as well, if they're your platforms. What we're trying to do more and more is just put out a lot of content that is just there. It's just free. We're not asking for anything back. We're not trying to do the, if you liked this, buy onto one of our courses thing. Sometimes that will be there because we're selling some of the courses, we're marketing some of the courses. But on the whole, we're trying to put a lot more out there because what we really believe in what we're doing and how we're able to help people. And you might have the budget to come and have 10 one-to-one sessions. You might have the budget just to do one. You might have the budget just to buy onto a pre-recorded kind of course that we have available. More of those coming soon. And you might not have the budget for any of those things. And you still see the value in this. So come check out the LinkedIn, just read our blogs and watch our videos and take as much of that content as you want for free, even if we never speak, even if you never come to do any of our sessions. Yeah, please just send me messages and be involved in the content in that way, because it's a great way for us to connect, regardless of money, on the things that we think really matter for everybody.
Mike, it has been a true pleasure. It's been really wonderful learning more about you, meeting you in person, hearing your stories and how you're helping people. I've loved this, Mike. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
And I've loved it too. Thank you for having me on. Really, really appreciate it.